Hi, everyone. We're back with a very exciting episode of the GTHL Breakout Podcast. It is International Women's Day today, so we have put together officiating roundtable of women at different elements and roles in the officiating world. So thank you so much to each of you for joining us. To do a quick intro, I know I won't do any of you the justice you deserve, but we have Kirsten Welsh with us. She was the first OHL lines person as a female to hit that level in the league. Then we have Danielle Wiliams with us, who's a GTHL official, but also the first female to officiate in the OHL Cup, as well as an instructor behind the scenes with us as well. And we have Róisín, Keane, official in the GTHL, NYHL, a lot of experience under your belt with about 7 seasons. So we have a loaded group here. I'm very excited to go down our chats and see what we have to say here. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So we're going to start very generic. It's a pretty, I think, a loaded question in a lot of ways, but what made you each want to get into the world of officiating? So I guess we'll start with Kirsten.
Sure. So I have only been officiating since 2019. My backstory is I was a player throughout my entire life. I actually never had goals to officiate. I never even knew it was an option, to be quite honest. I graduated off a D1 scholarship in Pittsburgh, and I ended up staying around. I'm originally from Toronto, backstory. Ended up in Pittsburgh, stayed there because I found my husband, who I love so much. So he kept me down there, and now I am living and working full time. Upon graduation, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't really have, I could have went overseas. I could have played, professionally, but nothing was really like stand out in terms of sustainability. As you guys know, as females, there's a huge gap with professional sports and females right now. So tried to take like the logical route, and an opportunity presented itself. My graduating year, a gentleman by the name of Stephen Wacom, who is the president or the vice president of all developmental officials in the NHL. He happens to live in Pittsburgh, and he contacted everyone in my graduating class asking if there's any females willing to try officiating. I said, no, absolutely not. My first answer, because when I think of officials, like as a player, I just never even knew that was an option. I never even considered it. I was a jerk to officials, actually, and I was a goon. So I never really even considered myself to, I say now, join the dark side. But yeah, he said, there's nothing to lose. Like, we're really like, this is like the next, like, there's just a huge opening for this position. And, we're really trying to recruit females to try it. So like, why don't you come try? We're looking for ex-athletes. So I went to the NHL Combine in 2019. And that was my first ever time officiating, trying it, just seeing what it was like. And yeah, I just kind of fell in love with it immediately. Not gonna lie, I didn't know it was as fun as it was. And just being able to keep the skates on and like keep doing what I loved and pursuing what I loved and able to get out there at a high level was incredible. It just opened my eyes so wide as to what the possibilities were. So I tried it and I stuck with it, and now I am currently working in the AHL, the OHL. I'm internationally licensed as an IHF official for US, and this is my 3rd year reffing. So it's been a lot. It's been a lot over the past, 3-4 years, but I'm just taking it in day by day, and I wouldn't change a thing. So my message is, if you don't ever tried it before, definitely try it.
A whirlwind beginning for you, for sure. So we go from that experience, and we'll throw it to you, Róisín, because we mentioned the 7-year experience there. What made you want to jump in and wear the stripes?
Yeah, so I've always had a lot of passion for the sport and the community. And kind of when I hit a point in grade 11 where it's really where you decide if you want to go forward with the sport or turn your focus to school, my dad kind of said to me that he thinks that I should officiate. So he enrolled me, and he recertified me for the first 2 to 3 years in terms of registration, just because at first it was a really difficult position to be in as a young female. And for 2 out of 3 leagues that I was officiating with, like, I was one of 3. And no one was really in my age group either. So as kind of I evolved, by day I'm a business analyst for mobility and accessibility company, but my evenings are really filled with hockey, and it's a passion that I just continued instilling in myself and thrived for. So that's kind of how I got into it.
And Danielle, I can't help but notice as both were talking, you have the passion as an instructor and obviously GTHL official, but you're very passionate about getting more involved in the role. So tell us how you got started out.
So I think my story is actually a lot different from you guys. My mom was actually a referee. So she started when I was 2 as a part-time job to pay as a single mom, to kind of as an extra job. And she also refs in the GTHL. So I started when I was in 8th grade. So this is my 14th season. And now I'm an instructor. I referee in the OHA. I ref in the GTHL. I've instructed for about 6 years now. But yeah, so interestingly enough, I actually didn't play hockey. So I had to start from a very different thought process and go through a very different way into skating, reffing, all of it. So I've had a different experience. So as far as instructing goes, when I go into a classroom, it kind of gives me a different viewpoint as to how to help newer officials come through, because newer officials don't necessarily have the best thought process. They don't have a player's thought process, or even per se someone who's been very much in the game. So I've enjoyed that, and that's kind of what I hope to keep going through. And it's interesting because it's so great to see the two of you, because even I've been around when you guys started, so I've seen like where I started, the difference then to now. It's completely different, and I love it. It's so awesome that it's open, and we're even having a podcast with female officials, because when I started, there was no way that was ever going to be a thing or even thought of. So I'm just happy that we're here now, and this is how far we've come. So.
Well, on that, because it's so interesting, the different routes that all three of you have. So I want to pose a question of, given each of your, I guess, entrance point into becoming an official, what advice would you give young girls? So Kirsten, you come from a different line, but what advice would you give for young girls looking to get into officiating? Maybe those who aren't and
Absolutely
would consider it.
Honestly, I think it's a great way to like in my eyes, like for young officials, like you could like start working a job, and like it's not really a job. That's the thing. It's like kids love sports, and like if you have like the slightest bit interest of like hockey or NHL or whatever, it's a way to be in a competitive environment, be involved with the sport, and get paid for it. Like versus other jobs, like entry-level jobs is like young teenagers like working at McDonald's or like working at a retail store. Like it's such a better environment in terms of like just getting active and learning about yourself and learning how to deal with really strange situations that you wouldn't be put in like normally. Like it gives you definitely learn to, I think it's definitely a test of your confidence. And as a young official, it's very intimidating, wanting to get into that position of having to be like authoritative figure. But I think if you get into it young enough and you're with really great people who you can learn from and understand like that role better and learn how to deal with these situations, like I think it really builds character. So as a young girl, and if this is intimidating to you, like I think it's just like having the power to be an authoritative figure in a game that you love, and being able to understand it better by knowing the rules and getting in situations that you never be in normally. Like it's just, there's so many positives that I see, and I wish I started so much younger. Like I wish I just tried it in high school or even like elementary school. Like I wish I would have been so much farther in terms of like my advancement of the rule knowledge, because as a player I knew nothing. Like looking back, I'm like, I had actually no idea what the rules were this entire time. But because you just play, like you don't really understand it. So having that like deep and under like perspective and understanding of the game itself and being able to be paid for it, it's a really amazing opportunity. And even if you don't like it, why not try it? We have nothing else to lose.
Well, and Róisín, you noticed just on the confident point there, Kirsten, you noted earlier that you were one of the few and that dynamic for you. So what advice would you give to young girls with that perspective and experience?
I mean, officiating has given me the ability to deal with various types of personalities, and just to go on Kirsten's point that, I mean, for me, even in my day-to-day life, like, it's anytime I job interview, it's the first thing that captures people's minds. It's giving me the ability to build my character and who I am today, and it's built my confidence, assertiveness, critical analytical skills, and de-escalation. These are skills that that you need to get through life, and I feel like the sport has really helped develop that for me, being in the officiating stance, and that I didn't necessarily have as a player. So I think that, and I'm an extrovert and I'm very outspoken, but I found that being in that position had taught me the different ways of dealing with people in different capacities. And I mean, when you're in that position, it's very liberating.
Well, and Danielle, we've noted your different experience in the world of officiating, but you're also an instructor and you get to give this advice often. So give us some tips, give us some advice that you share in your messaging.
Honestly, I've noticed that anyone coming in as a new official, their first thing is, well, I don't want to get yelled at. I don't want to have a coach yelling at. I don't know what to do if a parent yells at me. I don't know what to do if a coach yells at you. And what's interesting is almost every time after their first year, they're like, it's funny, I can't hear anything when I'm on the ice. And it's like, no, you're not going to hear anything. And even if you do, we're teaching you what to do when that happens. So you're going to learn it and you're going to be fine. And then it's going to be a funny story next week when you go to tell your friends. And the best part is, like, I'm sure both of you know just as well as I do, it's a huge community. So every week, I know I have a group of refs that we go out with every Friday, and we just sit there and we gossip about all the nonsense that we went through that week, or what's a funny thing a player said to us, or God knows what. And like, it makes it fun. It really is like your own sport. You're on your own team, and it's just a fun experience that, like, as much as there's these small negatives, they really become positives at the end of the day. Like, you get to learn how to de-escalate it, and then you get to have a group of friends that totally understands what you're going through, that you can just like talk with and go like, what are they talking about? Like, I don't understand. So it's really just a fun experience. And like, not only that, but isn't it nice to go have that fun experience, get a workout, and then get paid for it? So like, how can you say no to that, in my opinion?
Well, and you alluded to that community, and it's definitely a community that, like you mentioned, you are only going to understand what you're going through, I think, if you're in it. So all three of you are nodding, definitely on the same page as you were saying that, Danielle. So it's definitely a new team that you would be joining as you become an official. And for Kirsten, you were, as we mentioned earlier, the OHL's first female lines person. You joined a whole new community with that step. With that, was that something you took in? Like, was it a milestone that you took in when it was happening, or is it something you appreciate more now?
I definitely think I appreciate it more now. It's really hard to kind of grasp like what it meant, because I'm not from the officiating world. So like, me coming from hockey, like I grew up playing boys hockey my whole life. So, you know, being a female and coaching, or, you know, reffing OHL players, I was like, like, just like the old good old days, like whatever, just throw me a closet and I'll change by myself. But I didn't really realize like the depth of what that meant for like the, you know, officiating world in general for females, just because it is like obviously the OHL, and like it's just a different world, like in terms of like what is accepted, and like it's just never really been seen before. So the acceptance of that whole, you know, experience of being the first, and like kind of seeing like the support all over the league was like truly incredible. I didn't really know how to prepare for it or like what to expect, but the biggest, I don't know, I just think the biggest thing that I realized or like encountered was just like how amazing like everyone was in the league, like players, coaches, everyone, because they are aware of like this society we're in now. Like they know like this is the next step in, you know, developing hockey. And there's no reason why, if you're a good official and you're female, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that level. So I just think having the experience that obviously like I had like growing up, like playing boys, I think that also allowed me to have this opportunity because you just like kind of, you're used to the speed and like the level of intensity, and they get hot, like they get heated, they get pissed at you, but like it's part of the game. And as a player, I think that really helped me understand like the emotional side of it, because I was that player. Like I instantly understood. Like I never really was like thrown off by like getting yelled at if I missed a play or like had a bad face off, because like I would do the same thing. So it's just really, it was cool to kind of have that like relation, like even though I was like on the other side of things, but just really opened up my eyes to like what this meant in the big picture after the fact, not during. So
well, something you continue to look back on and reflect on, I think, as things continue to progress forward, for sure. And Danielle, we mentioned also that you were the first female to officiate in the OHL Cup. So the top under 16 teams go head to head, usually in March, beginning of April. So is this something you also look back on now more with more appreciation, or was it a moment in time for you?
Honestly, I think I look back at it with a lot more appreciation for it. I think at the time it was a surprise, and at that time I'd spent years at that point like going through and having these guys that I skate with being like, well, no, you're never going to be as fast as a guy, so why even try? Why would they schedule you into it? Because you're never going to do this and you're never going to do that. And then I remember getting the tournament and I was like, okay, so obviously this is the situation. So maybe we can move forward from this. And like, it's just nice glass ceiling that just got to be broken. And now I see the difference, because now I go to the rink and those same people that would have said those things in the past, they don't say anything. So you can see a very clear difference. It's been a very welcome change. And I know that in the GTHL, there have been women that have come in, went out, come in, went out. And the general prerogative of, okay, I have a shift next week that I'm skating with this person. It used to be oh no, like what could possibly happen in this game? What am I going into? It has now changed to, I get to skate with this person. I hope it's going to be so cool. It's so great that they're in the league. It's awesome. So like, I at the time, I think I was almost like, yeah, right, I should have already been here, like clearly. And now I'm like, no, this needed to happen. This is great that it did. And now we're moving in the right direction.
Well, and Róisín, as you're hearing both of these at first and the stories and how it made them both feel, and as one another are sharing them, there's a collective like feeling of empowerment here. I saw Kirsten with the fist bump. So Róisín, as you're listening to these, how does that then translate into you and what it means for you to be a female official in the GTHL?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with Danielle. I've definitely been what she's been through the GTHL for sure. I think that the league has really evolved, and even the staff, to become allies per se, just because it is pretty empowering now that I feel like I've stayed the leagues as long as I have because I've had great peers around me who support me, support my decisions, and also cheer me on. And I think that makes all the difference because it's the staff list and executive is male dominated, and it's really nice to have the people around us when I am skating or when I am making huge decisions on the ice to support me and be there for me and tell me I'm doing a good job. So I feel like I never fall short of that in these leagues, but it's definitely come a long way from when I originally started, because like I said, I was around 15 years old. Didn't know if that was an offside or not, and they were coming up to me, yelling at me, but now it's evolved to be like, great call, good job, like actually getting words of encouragement. So yeah, I think that's what's kept me really going and really wanting more, and really trying to think of myself and how I want this to evolve into kind of a career, because we can do amazing things as one another. And I think it's really important to empower, like even when I see young girls on the ice, like I'll say to the coach, like, she's amazing, like, you should get her into officiating. And I've actually like given them a couple of like the research programs, because I think I've even seen some parents and they've spoken up like, we need more people like you. It's like, well, it starts from a young age. And if you deter them by treating young officials a certain way, they're not going to want to continue going with it, right? But I think for all of us, we've created thick skin over time, and it's helped us to kind of evolve in the roles that we're in now. So it's like, again, I said, it's really nice to be here with you both, because for myself, even, I didn't think that this would be a possibility in the future, because at times you do feel quite alone, considering there's just not a lot of familiar female faces in around skating with you, right? So.
Totally. And it's really interesting to hear you say that, Róisín, because like I just know around my area, like I didn't obviously grow up doing this, but like just it's so important to have like female like yourself like helping girls and like educating them that this is a possibility. Like even just like talking to parents after like a skate, or like if they have questions, like answering them, like you have no idea like how far that goes in the long run, because like again there's just not a lot of representation. So I don't know. It's really cool to hear like even Danielle's point of view, how like she's literally seen like firsthand like how the reactions are different, of like how people are now excited because they give you the benefit of the doubt instead of just being, oh, it's gonna be terrible. Like it's like, oh wow, she's actually demonstrated that she's fully capable of doing this, equally as capable of any other male official. So why are we treating them the same? Like it's just that's what you two are like literally spearheading, and it's incredible. It's like we're all part of this community, but I think it's so important for us to like also like take that extra step to like be extremely welcoming and like supportive of younger officials, females in particular, because there's not a lot of representation. So it's like creating a community, you know?
Yeah, actually, what's actually interesting, what you just said was even more than that. Like, I don't know if you guys have went to clinics, right? We go to a clinic every year. Have you ever been in there and the person at the front of the room is telling you about how you need to go over to the coach and you need to say this and you need to say that, and you look at them and you go, there's no way I'm going to get away with this in any world. Like, period. Can we have something geared to every person, not just the 90% of the class? Like, let's be serious. So it's those types of things where I'm happy we even get to have this type of podcast where people can like go through and go, okay, so obviously this is a conversation. So I have these people I can call or I can email, I can ask the question, right? So like, it's the same thing, just having someone, that representation that like understands and like can have that conversation with you in that clinic, so you don't feel alone. It's just, I'm so happy about it in general. It's great.
Absolutely.
Well, I think each of you have just touched on it a little bit in terms of the challenges and the adversity that you face in the role as a female official. But is there something that each of you remember as a specific challenge or an adversity point where you went through it and you felt that it really took you to the next level, and that thick skin that Róisín mentioned? Kirsten, if you have something that tops the top of mind there.
Yeah, I think it's like for me, my experience in particular, I think it's the acceptability factor. Because like everyone's new, like everyone's just like still adjusting to this. First, it was weird because it was like, you know, they're just getting used to it, and they're kind of giving me like, I call it like the honeymoon phase, because they don't want to like say something too bad. And like, I thought that was the biggest challenge, just like not being treated like almost like they don't want to, it's like they're walking on eggshells almost. And I just wanted to be treated like any other official. And now like I'll get like yelled at if I make a mistake, and now I'll get like the odd comment like here and there, but like I would actually prefer that, because that is being treated equally. And like as an official, like having thick skin is part of the job. Like if you're going to come in this job and get upset about people like getting upset at plays or like blaming you, like you shouldn't do this job. And like that's the reality of it, like especially when you get to like higher level hockey. It's just like you have to like rise to the ability of your peers regardless of gender. So having like all these like male officials, it's like, yes, I'm a female, but I'm not going to let that, you know, be an excuse for why I can't skate as fast as these guys, or why I can't get in position, or why I can't use my voice or know the rules. Like all of these things, it's an equal playing field. So I'm not gonna like, it's just like the acceptability factor of like being a girl and like showing them that I can do the job just as well as anyone else and not being treated differently. That was kind of like the challenge. But honestly, it's an adjustment period for everyone. And I think it's just been like taking it day by day, and it's been positive to say the least. But I don't know what your guys' experience are, but that's just like from my perspective of working like the leagues that I work, in terms of like the biggest like adversity, I'd say, is just the acceptability.
Oh, I think that's a really good perspective, because I think a lot of times when we think about the acceptance, we think of, the far extreme of, the negative comments in that umbrella, but we don't really think about being treated in a different sense of maybe too polite or too kind because they don't want to hurt the girl's feelings, kind of thing. So I think it's a really interesting perspective. And I think it's something that we've all gone through in the sporting world where, well, we have to be nice to the girl, but it's kind of like, just we're here, we've toughed it out, we can take it with the best of them. So I think it's a really interesting perspective. Róisín, I'm not sure if that's a similar challenge that you faced or if you have a different perspective, but what would be one that stands out for you?
Yeah, I think that it comes in waves. I feel like at the start of when I was officiating, even just like house league and select, I had that imposter syndrome, and that's an HR term, but it's essentially just feeling like you shouldn't be there, right? And that you're not enough to be there. And I think that what contributed to that is a lot of misogynistic comments. And I just felt that they wouldn't say like, oh, that you should be refereeing. Like they would say you should be officiating girls hockey, if even that. But then they wouldn't say to a male you should be refereeing boys hockey, right? Like, so I think it would come in waves of misogynistic comments, and I mean, gross right away. Am I right? But yeah. So I think there's been specific scenarios that have just honestly made me stronger. Like I won't lie, I've gone to the ref room a couple times and just like cried, because I'm just like, how can somebody actually say that to another human? And I joke sometimes when I'm like, if only we had HR, because seriously, like the way sometimes coaches or parents speak is pretty crazy. But yeah, I think it just comes in waves, and I feel that now I've kind of have my head above the water, don't feel imposter syndrome, and haven't for the past few years, which has been very nice. And yeah, I just feel like there has to be more female presence on the ice, because we're evolving, and I feel like it's about time that we kind of take the reins and have all three officials on the ice be female, opposed to one or none, right?
Well, and Danielle, from the instructor perspective, mixed with being on the ice and the stripes, what has been your biggest challenge?
Actually, funny enough, a little bit of both of what you guys have both said. My biggest issue that I had to go over when I first started was safety. It's always a safety issue to put me on the ice, because I'm never, it's possible that I could get hurt. I'm not this. And then it started hitting a point where people were moving further than me that were the same size. So the safety didn't make sense. So then they had to change the conversation. And then I had a little bit of imposter issues, the same type of thing. And weirdly enough, this is going to sound really strange, but my fiance is actually a referee, and he's the one who kind of took me out of that imposter syndrome and was like, we've been skating the same amount of time. We met reffing, like we skate together. I get yelled at just as much as you. Trust me, you're good. Don't worry. This is what you're supposed to be doing. You're doing just fine. So like, it actually brought me out of it. And like, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've had times where I've cried my whole way home, just like done. And it's hard, and it takes a lot to come out of it. So I'm happy I'm now at a stage, and don't get me wrong, I still have my moments. I think everyone does, where you have a really bad night and you're like, why am I even here? Why waste my time here? Because I don't need to be here. And then the next day you're like, what? No, this is why I'm here. You have a great experience. Someone says, hey, nice to see you. It's so great that you're out here. Hope you have a good game, right? Like, it's one of those things. And from an instructor perspective, like, I don't think there's anything to really say to a person or see that can bring someone out of it outside of their own personal experiences that are going to kind of bring them out of it. It's the only way to do it is just keep going. I guess that would be my one thing.
You know what, you two are like in the trenches, like doing minor hockey. Like, unfortunately, like the lower level you do, as you guys know, the absolute worst it gets. And it's ridiculous. Like, you think like higher level hockey, like it just, anyways, I just give it to you guys like so much credit, because it's one thing being like in my position doing like OHL, where like it's professional, like they actually can get like games and like supplemental discipline, but like you guys, like it's just, it's not as like closely looked at. So like there's so much, like there's so many people getting away with this stuff, and like there's so many male referees who don't kick them out for this kind of thing. So when we, you know, hear this and kick them out, and it's like, oh, you know, go back to women's hockey, it's like, no, this is a strictly respect thing. Like, you clearly can't understand like the perspective of a female. That's why I'm kicking you out, not because I don't know how to ref hockey. Like, and I've seen like, I try and do some local hockey in Pittsburgh, and like it's just, it's the same, it's brutal, and I can't, it's really hard for like new officials to get into that. So it's just, I can't stress the importance of like you two doing what you do, and like being there as like support, like like for any sort of females growing up in the GTHL. I can't even imagine what it's like. So
I think to touch on that too is just that, yeah, like they get away with a lot. And I think when the female officials do call things, there's always like a comment after about like, oh, you're too emotional, or that really hit you hard, didn't it? Like, because a lot of, even when I'm speaking with some of my fellow peers and I'm telling them what happened and telling them what penalty I should be assessed, even if I'm lining sometimes, I'll just make a recommendation. They're like, no, like 2-minute minor. I'm like, I just told you what they said. And I just told you what I heard what they said, right? But I think I've shared this a few times, but just a little story was that I was interning at a Big Four bank in events and marketing, and I had this brutal coach one evening, and he just like would not stop bothering me like about absolutely anything. And there was a point in the game where like it was actually going well, and he ended up winning. Not that that matters, but just to think that his mood would be uplifted in some capacity. And then a week later, I was taking his board minutes at this Big Four bank, and he recognized me, and he came over, and he was so apologetic because he realized like what he had done. And I just thought to myself, it's so interesting how people change once they enter the rink, right? And what that brings upon a person, and what we have to be subjected to because of how their day went previously, or how a game. And I mean, I don't want to just say it's a game, because it is really important, right? But I think that you have to step back and realize the impact that you're putting on another person, right? And also what they're going through. But yeah, it's a little story that I've shared a couple times, and it just shows the interesting evolvement of kind of and that person was very high up in the Big Four. I'm not going to name the bank, but very high up.
yeah, and it's like, yeah, it's just adding in that human factor. It's like, yeah, this isn't my sole job. Like, this is something I do on my weekends and weeknights, and like I also have a job, and I also have feelings, and I also, you know, don't love being yelled at because you had a bad day. Like, it's just, so that's really interesting that you saw him.
I
And
know, I never thought I would. Like, I thought I would in the rink again, but yeah, exactly. Just to touch on that. It's just that, yeah, like I have a full-time job by day, and this is something I'm doing like for myself, for exercise, getting back to the community, and obviously to make a little bit extra cash. But that understanding like the contribution of another person, like I just worked 8 hours, and I'm coming here to work another 5, right? So yeah, I completely understand. But yeah, minor hockey is definitely an interesting game, and I'm sure Danielle shares that with me, because we've done some tournaments together, and we get into the room and we're like, ah.
Well, I'm going to pull from that here, because their message is there. I think the message is, once you leave the rink, you're still human. When you enter the rink, you're still human. And that's often forgotten when it comes to officials on the ice. But if there was one message you would want parents and coaches, really any spectator and players themselves as well, to pull from an officiating perspective, what would you want them to remember when they're in the rink? And anyone can jump at that first.
this could be your mother, your daughter, your sister, or your girlfriend. So how would you feel if she got talked to that way? That's all I have to say.
Good way to put it. Simple, but it gets the message across.
Oh,
Danielle's thinking of a loaded answer. I can.
oh yeah. I have like the bitter answer I can think of, or like the sarcastic, like stop and breathe before you talk. It's like stop, think, breathe, talk. Like but like I would I honestly I wouldn't even know what to say to a parent or a coach. I help out with other things as well. So I've talked to a lot of parents and a lot of coaches in the past, and what I've found more so than anything is like they all think that we don't know when we've made a mistake, and we're the ones out there saying like, no, we're always right, and they don't think like we're probably more aware than you are that we've made a mistake. We can probably count and tally more mistakes than you can even see. So like we have no problem having the conversation with you. So just take a step back. Like take a step back and just stop for a second. Like if you think it's a mistake and you think it's not the right rule or whatever, then maybe that's the case. But you know what? Like give us the benefit of the doubt that at least we acknowledge it and we are aware, because I think that's a big thing too on us. We as referees, we should say when we made a mistake, because we're going to get a huge amount of respect from that. And coaches and parents, I think, also agree with that. I've had parents that I've talked to after the fact, and I'm like, honestly, I was like, I totally see what you're saying, but that's not what I seen. I'm sorry, but like this is what I seen, and I'm sure you had a better view sitting 100 feet away with a bird's eye view of everything on the rink. I'm sure you got a much better viewpoint, but this is what I seen. And having that conversation and just remembering like I am a human. I can't see everything. I don't claim to be amazing. I just try to get what I think is correct. So just take that into account, in my opinion. That's a lot, but I can't think of one specific phrase to tell a parent or a coach.
It's like, do we come to your job and yell at you when you make a mistake?
Yeah.
No. So
Exactly.
why do you think that's okay to do here?
And I've said that too before, like you're coming into my workplace and treating me like this. Like I never would, and I never will come into your place and treat you like that. So yeah, I think it's like interesting to differentiate passion to kind of just like anger and just going wild, right? Like I think there's a lot of confusion about those two things, and I really can't come up with absolutely one, but just kind of understanding that everyone's human and makes a mistake, but if I make a mistake on ice, I'm going through with the mistake. And you're not going to make me change it.
Dog is strong, baby.
Yeah, exactly. So like I'm so sorry, but falls into the penalty code, I'm going with it, and you're not going to change my mind. That's just how it is. And they teach you that in ref school, right? Like you have to be confident with your decision. Like, I mean, unless it's going from a 4 to a 2 or a 2 to a 4, like I'm rolling with it.
Double pump the wave if you're really not sure, really close,
exactly.
you know?
Exactly.
Well, I think it just stems to the fact of the human error part, and it happens in every single aspect of our life. It's going to happen on the ice. And I think I obviously can't speak to the officiating perspective, but I think I can relate from the sense of a player perspective, in that when you're a player, you know when you've made a mistake. 9 times out of 10, you know when you made a mistake, and you go back to the bench and the coach is telling you made a mistake, and you're sitting there going, I know, and you don't want to hear it. So I think from people in the stands and parents and coaches, you know how that feels, whether it's not from an officiating standpoint, but it's from some perspective in your life, where when you know you've made a mistake and then someone's telling you about it, it's the last thing you want to hear. So you're probably not going to win over an official that way. So it's to connect those all. It's just, mistakes are going to happen, especially for us when we're looking at it on the GTHL side of things. I mean, most important thing for us is getting officials in the game and keeping kids on the ice. If you keep yelling at officials, there's not going to be many to go around, and your kid's not going to have a game. So
exactly, and teams have folded in multiple leagues because there's not enough officials to be able to facilitate that. Even after the pandemic, I remember that certain regions were really suffering because there weren't I think young officials were like, this isn't worth it. So we're older officials, they're retiring early because they're like, oh my gosh, peace and quiet for 2 whole years. Like, I can continue this, right? So it's been really hard to keep people engaged in the game after that really long pause. But I think, yeah, we have to be able to cultivate and keep officials on, right? And that's only with dealing with things right in the game, and then after that, having the league deal with them in the capacity that they should be, right? I mean, I don't ever follow up with what happens after I report something, but I ensure that I feel that the leagues are taking care of it and have my best interest in mind to protect me and trust my word for what I've reported.
Well, I want to take that and I want to finish on a positive note and ask all three, why do you think someone should officiate? Danielle, we'll throw it to you first.
I think someone should officiate for the experience. This past summer, I got to go to Israel and referee. I got to go to Wisconsin and referee. I got to do a lot of things. And you know what? That is so cool to be able to do. And you get to meet new people, get new experiences, and you meet a whole new group of friends and a whole new community that you get to now have. And you can then contact them at any time and say, hey, I'm coming over here. What are you doing? And that's just awesome, in my opinion. So it'd be the experience.
Róisín?
I think I'm not well traveled like Danielle or Kirsten just yet, but definitely for the experience and be able to, I don't know, like I said, it's really built my character and helped me make decisions in my life whenever they come, and at a quick, fast pace. And for that, I'm thankful for kind of the experience, and I feel like others will definitely benefit from it.
Yeah, I would say my message will be directed towards like hockey players because that's kind of where I came from. It's a possibility and an opportunity for you to keep playing when you maybe want to hang up the skates, and start early, because the sooner you start, the better you understand the game and the more respect you get from everyone, coaches, teammates, players, referees. And if you like think of, oh, maybe I have to work a full-time job now, maybe I have to make that career decision of giving up hockey. Well, guess what? You don't have to if you keep reffing as a side gig. Like, it's just, there's so many like benefits of starting early and having that in your back pocket as like a tool to, do in case you can't keep playing for whatever reason. So it's just an opportunity to stay in the game. And you love hockey and, you've been doing it your whole life, and why not? So.
Excellent. Those are all great messages. Well, all three of you are certainly role models, not only for, young females and young female officials, but just for anyone looking to get into officiating as a whole. You're laying the groundwork, you're setting the foundation for more to get into the game. We definitely need that on all levels. So we thank you, all three of you, for joining us. It was a fantastic conversation. I certainly enjoyed it. So thank you so much, all three of you, for lending us some time today.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for having a podcast and a platform to talk about this, because that's just as important. If we're doing the groundwork and no one's reporting it, then, so thank you for taking the time to recognize this, because it's huge.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is great.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And we're very excited to wrap up this episode of the GTHL Breakout Podcast, but we're looking forward to bringing you many more stories, just like Danielle's, Róisín's, and Kirsten's.